I'm Annoushka, and I've been designing jewellery for 30 years and collecting charms for as long as I can remember. In this podcast, I will be asking a series of extraordinary women to tell me their life story in 7 charms. Welcome to my podcast, My Life in 7 Charms. I'm thrilled to welcome the brilliant stylist and tastemaker, Lucinda Chambers, to My Life in 7 Charms.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, really lovely to see you. So, Lucinda, your first charm is a penguin, but I think he'll make a gorgeous charm. So I've designed the charm. Wherever I can, I kind of make something as beautifully in miniature as I can. So I see this as quite a fat, chubby little penguin.
Good.
And so he's 3-dimensional. His black is represented by black diamonds, black pave diamonds, set in white gold with black rhodium. So you don't see any of the claws on the diamond. So it's really kind of black, but got some texture. And his tummy is polished white gold. And then his little feet are yellow gold. And they'll be perfectly, with all the detail of the kind of his toes and everything. Then on the bottom of his feet, I've just written mummy, because I think this represents your mother. And he'll have a little black diamond eye and a gold yellow beak. And I think he'll be absolutely adorable, actually.
Well, he sounds sensational.
But you've obviously got quite a lot of penguins, haven't you?
We've got a lot of penguins. And it's very funny because when you asked, and I was thinking about my mother, and I was thinking it's slightly at odds with her because she was very practical, but then it makes perfect sense because she had an incredible sense of the ridiculous.
Right.
And I think so do my children, and we all have kind of a similar sense of humour. And penguins, I think, somehow really tickled her because they're so crazy. Well, I mean, they're not elegant, and I'm sure the charm will be incredibly elegant because the colouring is so beautiful, but they're not elegant, and they're slightly bonkers, and they made her laugh. And of course, it gave us a sort of focal point. So whenever we saw a penguin, and it was usually an old one knocking around in a marketplace, or, we'd buy it for her, whether it's sort of a bashed old wooden one, and then it was something for the children to collect for her. I think she just thought they were really humorous, and she had a terrific sense of humour.
I love the idea. Have you still got all these penguins?
I've got some of them.
Have you?
Yes, I've got some of them. Funnily enough, she was incredible, my mother, later on in life, when I think it probably started in her mid-60s, so kind of where I am now, although I can't imagine doing this.
Yeah.
She started to really understand how she was going to end up in life. And she's very like me. She loved collecting things, but she was very unmaterialistic, also very like me.
Right.
And her goal was to end up in a convent, which she had identified, in one room with a computer and a wardrobe full of her clothes. She was mad about clothes. And this convent was in South Kensington. Yeah. And that's exactly what she did do. Right. And so starting at sort of age 60, sort of mid-60s, she began to give away everything that she had collected. Oh, paintings and clothes and stuff. She didn't want to end up with any stuff.
And she didn't want you guys to end up with all that stuff to sort out.
And I think that was she was predominantly a very practical woman, always thinking ahead, but also really enjoying the moment. But she understood exactly how it was going to be, but she also understood herself. And she found the only convent that would allow her to have a fridge and a bottle of champagne. And that's what she did in South Ken, opposite the Blake's Hotel.
So, so she was, our age when she started thinking about all of this. Have you started thinking about all that?
Yes, because I'm clearing out a flat at the moment. That's my son's, and I'm a big collector, but I've just started giving away pictures and. Yes, so it has, I think, probably at the same time that it's occurred to her, but also not because she's the same age as me when she started to do it, but more because I'm clearing out this flat and there's so much stuff and it's stifling. Yeah. I mean, I loved it, when I have it, but I also love giving it away. And I've just started, I gave a really beautiful painting to my partner in Colville. It's a Craigie Aitchison. And I just thought, yeah, that's the first thing I'm going to just say, you know what, Molly, this will look so much better on your wall.
How nice.
So I'm going to start to do that.
Lucky
yeah.
Molly. Lucky Molly.
It's, but also, Annoushka, I think things have their time.
Yeah, no, I that. Well,
They
yeah,
have their
absolutely.
time.
It's so interesting because actually, my mother died when I was 23, and very, very, very suddenly. So being an only child, I ended up with all this stuff. I mean, stuff.
And at a very young age.
At a very young age. Anyway, it's just so interesting what you're saying, because I've kind of been thinking about it myself, thinking I don't want my daughter to have to deal with all this stuff. That frankly, they want less and less stuff.
Yeah, they do.
So what do you collect?
Interestingly, not at this precise moment, but you know, we do a lot of collaborations, and the things that I've collected really come in handy for when I need a textile, or when I need a print, or when I need colours together. So actually, the stuff that I collect, or this is what I tell myself, is that they do have they can come into another life and be useful for something else. That's how I justify it.
No, it's so interesting because I had all this stuff from my mother, and a kind of jewellery box full of all sorts of stuff, not necessarily precious at all, might have been market stuff, etc., etc. And still, I go to that jewellery box and
you kept it all. You
kept it all, and that kind of thing. And it might just be the top of something, a detail or something.
Something that sparks something off.
But we got completely off subject, but I'm really interested in this business of moving house 18 times.
Yes. Necessity, because that's how we made some money.
Right. And turning these houses. Yeah.
Yes, but so she and my father always found a wreck, but we always lived in them, surrounded by, she was amazing with her hands. So she could build a dry stone wall herself. She could wallpaper herself. We were always painting.
She English?
Yes.
Okay.
But she was highly unusual, and she had an incredible sense of space, which I don't have, of that she could go into a wreck of a house or a flat and say, well, if I ripped out the stairs there, turned that wall back to front, put the stairs in back to front, put a full ceiling in there, this could be good. And she would do it the minute it was done. My brother and I actually had a kind of semi-roof over our head. We'd be on the move again. So consequently, I think that's why my husband and I have lived in our house for 35 years, and the thought of moving is just an anathema to me. But what was incredible is that she loved change, and I love that too. Yeah. And I think transformation, that because everything that she didn't have a pattern, so we could live in a kind of 70s modern flat and then go into a kind of flat and chainy walk that was totally rococo and gold and coal, and she would do all the upholstery herself, and that's so very, very practical with her hands.
God, how amazing! That must have been subconsciously a huge influence on what you've gone on to do. Do you think?
I think it probably did, although I wasn't aware of it at the time. And she always, when people would say to her, "You're creative," she said, "I'm not creative," and she loved decoration, which I think that is what I do fundamentally, is decorate, whether it's for the body or whether it's for the home or whether it's for your mind. It's decoration and transformation in that sense. And I always, throughout my career, I loved, particularly when I was on Vogue, loved creating sets and narratives and storytelling. So I think that does come from her. And I think she always made our clothes. So she started out, actually not very far from here in Pelham Terrace, teaching sewing and flower arranging to kind of debutantes.
Did she?
She worked for a woman called Betty Bailey, and just to earn some money. And she was fantastic at sewing. So she did teach me how to sew. So I can sew. Yeah, I can sew.
Do you pattern cutting? Do you all of that?
I can make a pair of trousers. I never learned pattern cutting, but I could make a pair of trousers, and well, the sewing was a bit of a disaster for me. I mean, I would make all my own clothes, but they didn't last very long.
That's so funny. But that brings me quite neatly onto your next charm, actually, which I read somewhere that your first day at Vogue, you you decided to wear a tutu. So your next charm is a tutu.
I love that. So great.
And I read, I thought this is so funny. He said, I look like a Morris dancer on acid. You told me that it was that it had leaves around it, around the waistband. I mean, you describe it. You describe your tutu, and I'll describe the charm.
I think I was so overexcited about getting a job at Vogue, and it had been quite a sort of circuitous route. And I had imagined, because I hadn't been there before, I didn't know anybody who worked at Vogue or Condé Nast, and so I imagined that everybody was kind of incredibly, amazingly dressed.
Yeah.
Actually, they all wore sweater dresses and cowboy boots. I remember thinking, oh God, I've got it so wrong. But I made this tutu the night before, not very well, and I remember it was quite see-through, so I cut out petals.
So was it tulle?
Yes, it was net.
Tulle. Yeah,
and
net.
I stuck the petals in the waistband, and then I wore a pair of ballet shoes, and I decided to tie laces up the legs, ribbons. So I did look like a Morris dancer. I mean, it was, and I don't know what I was wearing on top. Maybe
colour?
nothing.
What colour
It was
was
all
it?
sort of pink and green and fairy-like. And my hair was multicoloured because I used to dye it lots of different colours, and it was bleach blonde with all these multicoloured tips. I mean, I looked like a car crash. And I was working in the petty cash department, so it required no stretch of the imagination, clothes-wise, or anything else for that matter. And I was working for a very ferocious woman called Lily Davis, Miss Davis, we used to call her. And I turned up, and I mean, people saw me kind of from top up because I sat behind a desk, typing out petty cash slips badly.
Yeah.
But the head of personnel had got me this job, and she said, it's just an in. You're going to get in the door.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. It was a way in. But the leaves all fell apart. And I think somebody actually shouted down the corridor, your bottom's hanging out. Because the leaf had to, been somewhere left along, probably in the loo.
So I've designed this. It just made me really smile. But I've actually designed it so that it's a skirt. It's a tutu. I made it in yellow gold, but very kind of textured to get
Lovely.
that kind of feeling of the tulle. And then I've put little leaves in white, pink sapphires set in white gold. I saw it as very girly, this little tutu.
Well, it's
And then-
totally elevated.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think a tutu's ever looked so incredible.
But
I mean, it's a totally
I
elevated
kind of quite
version.
like the idea of these legs
Dangling.
dangling,
Running
with
for the bus.
with the ballet shoes. So the legs in kind of rose gold and little ballet shoes, also in pink, kind of slightly darker pink sapphires. I didn't put the ribbon up the legs, but
Step too far.
a step too far. And then from the waistband, just like a little belt of chain and two little pearls on the end of the chain, so it kind of feels like it's built with lots of movement.
That's wonderful. Such a magical.
So I thought it'd be kind of
it's like a sort of
I thought
musical
it'd be
box.
quite amusing. But so I mean, my first question about Vogue is, everyone always thinks that everybody in fashion is really scary, really Devil Wears Prada. Everybody, I think. Tell me how it really is, because it can't be like that.
Well, I don't think it's like that. And I think my experience, and I was very lucky to have it for so long, was absolutely not like that. I think there are bits of it that could be or were like that. I don't think it was... I mean, listen, if you talk to any young kid, I don't think a young kid would say, I'm not interested in fashion.
Right, for sure.
So if that's a given, it's a very competitive business.
Yeah.
And with that, can come sharp elbows, I guess. Like anything, if you're working in film or music or...
Yeah.
But I think what was incredibly fortunate is that when Alex Shulman ran Vogue, she ran a really tight ship. And
In what do you mean by that?
in the sense that she employed women and men who were very, very serious about their job
Yeah.
and worked very hard, but didn't take themselves seriously. And I think that's the crux.
That's the key.
She employed intelligent I think often very kind women. We were all, well, and some men, but not very many men.
Yes,
it has to be
very
said.
female-based.
But very female-based. But we were all juggling jobs, children, often the main breadwinner.
Yeah.
You know, quite a lot of my contemporaries were the main breadwinner. So we took it seriously. We didn't take ourselves seriously.
Yeah.
So, and she wouldn't countenance any kind of bitchery. It was really interesting. And so therefore nobody was. But yes, I mean, then when I left British Vogue, I went on to work for American Vogue, and that was very different. And I would say, you know, Anna runs American Vogue in a very different way.
Right. Well, that's the epitome of scary. From where I'm sitting.
Yes, I mean, I just thought it was really interesting because it was very different.
Right.
But I loved it as well.
Yeah. Sharp elbows there?
No, but much more serious, I think.
Right.
That we weren't sharp-elbowed with each other, but we also wanted to deliver the best possible thing that we could. So I think in a funny way, to go back to the sharp elbows thing, we were competitive. I know I certainly was with ourselves. And I think it was something I said to myself that if I was standing in front of or behind the camera, and that could be in any other magazine apart from Vogue, then something was wrong with it. I'm not denigrating other magazines, but it had to look like a Vogue shoot. And that was a code of excellence.
Okay, that brings me very neatly onto your next charm, actually, because the next charm is the sun. It's 18 karat gold. It's 18 karat gold.
Yes, it's lovely.
It's got diamond eyes. It's got a little face that's quite smiley, but without being too smiley. And each of the rays move, and they've got diamonds set inside them. And actually, on the back of yours, I've just put a citrine stone. You said that throughout your career, you have been chasing the sun. Presumably, that's about following the sun for the shoot.
Yeah.
So, on a really basic level, because I think people who have never been in fashion or have never been involved in the kind of creative side of any business have no concept of what a shoot is. Because
why should they?
Why should they? But even when I do tiny little shoots, you know, for my jewellery business, I'm always absolutely amazed how many people there seem to be involved, no matter how simple I try to keep it. But can you just tell me, what are you looking for? What's the kind of concept as you devise this shoot in your mind?
What I love to do, and for me it was never about the clothes. The clothes helped me tell a story, and they facilitated. They were a part of the jigsaw puzzle that built up the narrative of this story. So if Alex would say to me, or I would say to Alex, I think we need to do a winter coat story, I'd go, oh, coats. Okay, so they're going to be on this model, and I think I'll ask Guinevere to do it because she's slightly older. She's got a really interesting face, and she's a woman who can't decide whether to leave her husband or not. And I'm going to take her to this island in Sweden, and she's a bit of a recluse because she had been famous. And she's at this point in her life where it's a dilemma. Oh, but she happens to be wearing a coat. And she's got a few coats. So the story for me was never about, oh, let's do a red coat, black coat, yellow coat, white coat. It was always about this woman. She feels safe in her coat. She feels cocooned. She wraps it around her. It's how she feels. The expression on her face, but she's really thinking about how she's going to leave her husband. But she's on an island. So it sounds convoluted and crazy.
No, it sounds...
But it was always, oh, if it's Kate Moss washed up on a desert island, we'd go to this, you know, crazy island where there was nothing there except driftwood, and she was wearing driftwood-type rags. And she would... You know, I asked Tom Binns to make jewellery that was pearls that fell out of a rope that was muddled in a seaweed situation because she was this castaway. She was this castaway where her skin was raw and red, and she'd been, you know, on the beach for 5 years, you know. So it was, the clothes facilitated me telling a story. I mean, I love fashion shows and I love designers because they're also telling stories. So for me, it was always about storytelling, and it was about what model what hair, what makeup artist would, you know, I really respected everybody I worked with, and they all were incredibly, or all are incredibly talented.
So that's so interesting. But is the process, do you start at the beginning, do you start the mood board of
Yes.
kind of...
Could be anything.
Could be anything.
I mean, I was thinking about a shoot once, and I think I mentioned this to you, and I was thinking about, I wanted these girls, I wanted the clothes to be black and white, because that's how I imagined it. But I wanted the photographs to be in colour, and I was shooting with Josh Olins, who I shot with a lot. And I was thinking, I don't know how to do it, And it was in autumn, and there were these leaves, and I thought, that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it like Village of the Damned. There are all these leaves and dead twigs, and they're going to be in their hair and on the ground, and they're going to be in these really simple black and white clothes. And the girls are going to look as if they hadn't seen the sun for 20 years, really pale.
Yeah.
One was really pale, white blonde hair. One was really pale but dark. So they looked a bit like Susie Bick, actually, one of the models. Yes, and then it came, and then it comes to you, and then you ring up Josh, and you think, Josh, you know, you say to him, and you take people on a journey, you know, and you hold their hand, and you want them to come with you. And
But it's so, when you talk about it like that, it sounds so kind of magical, and and it's not what I expected you to say at all. I expected you to be driven by the commercial or the fact that you wanted, you know, Alex wanted Kate or somebody, you know, a particular
well,
model.
that would happen if, you know, Alex would maybe, you know, we would talk about it and say that was a celebrity thing.
Yeah.
And that was different, but there still had to be a story in. But I mean, you know, there's still, you know, I remember when we shot Taylor Swift for the first time, and she was so clean and gorgeous. But I said, I want you to be really mean looking, like really. So we slicked back her hair and dressed it all in kind of Miu Miu. I want you to be a bad girl, because that's not how I think particularly with Vogue, and it, you know, when we photographed Victoria Beckham for the first time, she'd always done very sexy things, and I said, I want these pictures to be something that your children will pull out of a drawer and go, Mummy, you're just so beautiful, and I want you to look like a queen, you know. So I did her like Princess Margaret, you know, very like an old royal. I mean, not old in age, obviously, but like a young royal.
Yes.
But with hair, you know, curly. And, you know, with celebrities, it's slightly different because they're nervous and they don't particularly want to be transformed.
Does anyone ever say no to Vogue? Out of interest. Whether you're celebrity, model, does anybody ever say no?
It didn't happen.
Okay. That's kind of what I imagine.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never thought about that.
Yeah, no, I'm just like, I wonder whether that ever happened.
But you never took it for granted that they'd say yes, put it that way.
I want to take a quick moment to say thank you to our sponsor, Rome. I was recently introduced to this brilliant new skincare brand, and I've got to say, I'm already a big fan. Their clinically backed formulas are smart, simple, and seriously effective. Using the latest biotechnology, Rome pairs the best of nature with groundbreaking science. No fuss, no overthinking, just well-made, purposeful formulas that really deliver. It's honestly changed the way I think about looking after my skin. We're proud to be partnering with a brand that shares our outlook. Authentic, curious, and always pushing for better. So thank you, Rome, not just for supporting this podcast, but for proving that skincare doesn't need to be complicated to be meaningful. Coming back a bit, your next charm is Star. And you've said, follow your dreams. I always look up everywhere I go. And I was always told to follow your dreams. So look up and out. And you're never too old or young not to do so. And I thought, God, that's really, I love the whole concept of that, because it is so important to keep your eyes open and keep focused on whatever I've drawn it as a North Star. I'm thinking what your North Star is. So I have a whole collection of charms that or pendants that spin. So I've done this in a gold frame, and the star itself is actually 3-dimensional, and it's on a kind of rod so that it turns.
Wonderful.
Because I want it to. I
That's
think it's really
wonderful,
important
yes.
to turn. So, again, I love yellow gold, so I've done it in yellow gold with a diamond in the centre of the star. So, Lucinda, tell me about this star.
Yes, looking up again, or looking down to the leaf, looking up
Yeah.
to the star. Well, I think it's interesting what you say, Annoushka, because I really feel for young people, particularly, when it's really easy for me to say, follow your dreams, when for me, I think I've had an amazingly fortunate career. So it felt as if I was following my dream. But I didn't have a dream to start with. And I think it's really hard for young kids to identify what that dream is. I think some do and some don't. But I think it's really easy for older people to assume that young people should or could have a dream.
Yeah.
Because it's not often the case. And also, what do they know what jobs are out there? What do they know what the possibilities are? Yeah. I mean, I think it's easier now. Maybe with social media, you can kind of track. There's more information out there. But certainly for me, I had no idea what I wanted to do.
I had no idea either.
I never performed well at school, and I wasn't particularly good at anything.
Yeah.
So, it's easy to say follow your dream. But I had no idea what that dream was.
So the dream is kind of looking back, and it's almost like you're looking back, and actually I did follow you. You did follow your dream, but it kind of happened, unfolded. Yes.
I think there was a light bulb moment that definitely set me on a course.
Right.
So it wasn't a dream, but it was a curiosity thread.
Right.
So when I left school, I went to art college. My mother and I both went to art college at the same time.
Did you?
Yes.
Oh, how
and
wonderful.
she was 58,
Oh,
59.
lovely
Well,
thing to do.
it wasn't really. It was because we had to make some money.
Right.
And we had run out of money, and we only had a 5-year lease on our flat.
Right.
In those days, you could get a grant for art colleges, but you didn't have to pay it back, unlike these days.
Right.
So my mother said, we're going to make a portfolio at the kitchen table. We're going to get into an art college. She definitely decided that she had to learn a skill where she could make money. So she decided bookbinding, because it was something she could do alone.
Yeah.
It didn't need a lot of room. She could afford to do it. She could afford to buy the tools.
Yeah.
And it was something practical. So she definitely decided to do bookbinding. So she went to London College of Printing. I went to Hornsey, did a foundation, absolutely hated it, because I saw all these talented kids around me, and I knew I wasn't one of them.
Okay, so is it?
And I felt
imposter?
fraud.
Imposter
I felt,
syndrome.
and I felt I was being given a grant where I just shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And wasn't going to get anywhere with it. My mother, her course was 2 or 3 years, was learning something practical. But then I think somebody showed me the Perspex room at Hornsey, and it had all these colours, and the colours spoke to me of all these colours of plastic. And I started to learn how to work the machinery, and I started to make earrings. And then I used to wear them, and then I thought I could sell them. A couple of friends said, oh, I really like them. So I started to make them.
Well, they're big, giant earrings.
Yeah, they were
because
big,
they're light
zigzag,
on it. So
totally
light.
80s, like real, like fluorescent pinks and purples.
Super big.
Super big, zigzaggy, flashes of lightning, very kind of Ziggy Stardust. A friend of mine said, they're in a magazine. They're on a free magazine called Miss London, which was given out on the Tube.
I remember. Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
Really good. And I saw a pair of my earrings on this really tall girl model. And it was just... we weren't magazine buyers or anything like that in our family. I mean, we used to make our clothes, and we used to be really interested in, like, we'd go to Harrods, and my mother would always carry a tape measure. We'd, like, copy the clothes.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
What, surreptitiously with the
Yes,
with
we'd
the
be in
tape
the changing room, and we would measure up. I always have a tape measure in my bag, always, even now.
Yeah.
You never know. And she'd whip it out, we'd measure up, and we would go and choose the fabric, and she'd make the clothes, make the cape, or make the zippy-uppy 60s dress. No, it's really good. I remember all my outfits, and it was so brilliant. And they were quite... they were painting leather. They were quite out there.
Yeah,
my mother was,
out there.
Yeah, and she was an amazing dresser. So I made these things. But when I saw this in a magazine, I was like, I was blown away, because I had held those earrings in my hand and made them and sanded them. And so I thought, what is this journey between in my bedroom to on this stupendous model?
Yeah.
what's that journey? So that did set me on a course. And I thought, okay, from now on, I'm going to leave art college. I'm not going to go on. And I'm going to find out what that journey is.
Right. So
and
then
I need to know.
Yes.
And so everything I do now, whether it was working in Topshop or whether it was making costumes for a theatre company, everything I did had to be a bit like one of your little diamonds.
Yeah.
Had to be a grain of sand towards knowing more about fashion and this journey towards this magazine, this mythical magazine.
So
it gave me a
okay, so
focus.
that's so interesting.
Gave me a focus. It gave me a star.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to follow this.
I'm going to follow this,
Yeah.
and yes,
It's going
that's
to take
it.
me on this journey.
Your next charm is a tea. So I've done it as our kind of signature initial tea in a open oval frame with a diamond, just exactly a T with diamonds set inside them. So very simple. But all your children's names begin with T.
Well, they don't really, but they do. I mean, there's Tobias was my first son,
Yeah.
Toby. And then there's Theodore.
Yeah.
And then there's Gabriel, but the last son. But Gabriel's always called Twiz.
Right.
Theodore's always called Teddy.
Yeah.
But Tobes is always called Tobes.
Why?
So they are all T.
Why is Gabriel called Twiz?
Oh, because when I was pregnant, he absolutely rotated, a bit like your
Oh, really?
star on your T. Was completely rotation.
God.
And we had a wonderful nanny who was with us for years, a boy nanny called Bren, who's actually Twizzy's godfather. And he was like, well, he's such a Twizzler. And so he was always known as Twiz and still is.
I love that. I wasn't sure what you were going to say because I've got two boys called one's called Oscar, one's called Ollie, and the reason they got that was because I thought on their school labels it meant I wouldn't have to change
double
them.
up.
But it hadn't kind of occurred to me they went to different schools. So it was absolutely hopeless.
Yes, a small not saving.
But 3 children and a very full-on job. How did you manage all of that? Because I mean, I guess in fashion, it's not a 9-to-5 job, is it?
No, it certainly
No.
isn't. And actually, Annoushka, it's very few people ask me that.
Oh.
It's really interesting, but I often ask myself that.
I'm like, wow.
Because it was challenging, and I felt I was always away. And I said actually to Toby recently, I was always away. He said, "You're never away." I said, "I was always on a plane." And I do think that when I was with my children, when I was with the boys or with Simon, I was 100% with them, which I think is harder for women and men to do it these days. Now you're always on.
Yeah.
And I think I used to, if I could afford it, and I did, the money that I saved, I did spend, I would take my boys with me travelling. And they're great travellers. They all live out of London. I mean, one lives in Barcelona, one lives in Marrakesh. So I would take them on trips wherever I could. So what was great about that, Annoushka, is they absolutely understood what my work was and were quite involved with it. They loved seeing it.
Yes.
And in those days, it wasn't rushed. You could go on a trip for a week. You prepped and you worked very hard. Maybe I'd tag a day at the end of it.
Yeah.
And so they could see that I loved it. And I think what was I never apologised. I never sort of said, "I'm sorry, I have to go away."
Yeah.
I'd say, "Guess what, guys? I'm doing this incredible shoot with Patrick Dumarchelio. I'm going to Peru with Mario. We're going to be up a mountain. Might not be able to speak to you for 2 days."
Yeah.
They could see I loved it.
Yeah.
And it was very fulfilling.
Yeah. And did you ever, I mean, it's an obvious question.
Still
but
felt guilty.
I think that's just par for the course.
It's
isn't
a
it?
knapsack that goes on your
yes.
back.
Did you ever kind of, to think, oh God, I'm never at the school gates. I'm never doing the lunches.
Yeah.
Did you mind, or
Yeah,
did you?
I did feel guilty. Yeah, I did.
I think we all feel guilty.
I think
I'm just
however
interested whether you
much or little you do.
Yeah.
I remember once doing the school run and scrambling with their lunch boxes, and I remember one of my children was probably Theo saying, "Mimi, step aside. You don't know what goes in them. It's fine. We'll do it." And I remember feeling ashamed.
Yeah.
That I didn't. But on the other hand, I felt that they loved schools and they knew that I paid for the school fees.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's a quid pro quo, but I think they knew why I was in it, and they never they never made me feel that way. I remember one mother saying to me once, "You're never at the school gates." And I felt terrible. And I thought, no, I mean, I am sometimes.
Yeah.
And at certain times when I felt they needed me more, I would try and do it more.
Yeah.
But I was very lucky in the nannies that we had, that they stayed with us.
And was Simon,
Very much around.
Very much
Very
around.
much
So,
around.
Yeah.
He's a wonderful cook. And
But that
he's really
really
into
helps
cooking.
that you weren't both on that
I mean,
trajectory.
he was a diplomat when I first met him, and then he worked for the BBC. And now he coaches neurodiverse children. But yes, he had a job that was always very much. He could be at home.
Yeah. So that was it. And did you kind of create a space somewhere which was all about family, that was never?
Oh, for sure. Our house, you know, I mean, I left this morning and there was one person staying and there's another person tonight staying.
Right.
And then I think one of my children, my married name is Crow, and I think they put a notice on one of the doors saying, "This is the Crotel." You know, where strange people come and go, but you know, we don't always. There's always somebody staying, and it's very back and forth, and there's a lot of movement in it. Yeah, there is a lot of movement.
Yeah. So your next charm, I love the idea of this charm. You said, for the love of decoration. I think it's what I've done all my life, decorate. The bead symbolises for me just adding another beautiful bead. Whether it's home or fashion, me or a model, decoration defines me. I love the idea of the kind of analogy of a bead being the kind of decorative, you know, particularly for jewellery, which is, you know, because jewellery is about that. It's not about just about the piece of jewellery. It's about the moment, the memory, everything it means to you, and you know why. So I've done it very, very simply. Literally, I imagine it as a lapis lazuli bead, because lapis has got all different colours. It's got bits of gold in it, and I literally see it as a kind of worry bead set within a frame so that it can spin and you can play with it all the time.
Touch it and
feel it like a kind of worry bead.
Yeah.
So it's set in a yellow gold frame, and it is just really, really simple, and a few little diamonds on the frame just to kind of bring out the gold and the sparkle in the lapis. But it's really interesting you talk about that as kind of whether it's decorating or a model. I just love that analogy, because I mean, my first thing is, do you see yourself as fashion, as a fashion director, or do you see yourself as a decorator? Because in its kind of, at its most basic level. So if somebody says to you, "Listen, what do you do now?" Because Collagerie is so, you know, it's about fashion, it's about objects,
it embraces all those worlds.
Yeah, and it brings all of those worlds together. So I'm kind of interested now.
If somebody asked me now, "What do you do?" I would say, we have a website called Collagerie,
right?
And I have a fashion, does homes as well, called Colville. But that's how I would describe what I'm doing.
Yes.
And then they would say, "What is Collagerie?"
Yes.
And then I would describe it.
Okay, that's interesting. So tell me. So describe Collagerie for me.
Oh, okay. Serena Hood, my partner in it, and I wanted to create a shopping platform that really reflected how we think women shop today, and probably have done for quite a long time. We couldn't find it out there. And when we both met at Vogue, and Serena's amazing because she's American, half my age, fantastic business brain. And we both had the idea at exactly the same time, which is we were very privileged at Vogue. We could see everything out there. We could see every design, people just had to be on receive mode. Everything would come to us if we were open.
Yeah.
And we thought, where would we get all that wonderful information from now? I loved going into Zara. I worked a lot for high street brands. I loved finding the one thing. And as Collagerie, we like to say the one thing over everything. So if you want to buy a pair of black sandals, we'll find you the best pair of black sandals. And also across all price points. So Collagerie is a shopping platform bringing fashion and interiors into your home across all price points. Yeah. So that an H&M bath mat would look just as at home and equally fabulous alongside a Gucci handbag.
Yeah.
It's a mix. It's always about the mix and the curation, the heart. I'm not even going to say high and low in terms of prices.
Yeah.
So, whatever I think women dress, something that they have had for years, something that they've just bought, something that's vintage, something that's high street. It's all about the mix.
I know it's.
I know how you push it together.
It's. I mean, I absolutely love it. I'm like, oh my god. I mean, I get it daily. I can't remember.
Yeah,
do
but
I get it daily. I'm like, I think I do.
Every day.
Yeah, I think I'm getting
You
it
get
daily.
the emails 3 or 4 times a week.
And I think your open rate is extremely high.
It's very high.
Is it?
It's
yes,
very, very high.
Absolutely fantastic.
It's sort of off the scales, yeah.
And is it what you imagined? Is it better than you imagined, or did you imagine?
That's such a
did
good
you
question.
kind of? Is it like? Was it the North Star? Or
That's
was
such a good question. Yes, I suppose when you start something, Serena manifests. She's definitely a manifester.
Yes.
I don't. I sort of think each day is different. And I don't imagine what the office will look like or how many people we might employ. I kind of am an enjoy the day person situation.
Yes.
So I always sort of think if you put one right foot in front of the other, you'll get to somewhere. I'm not sure where that somewhere will be.
Yeah.
But I just want to do the right thing today and find the most exciting thing to do today.
Yeah.
And let's see where that
takes us.
Yes. I think Serena actually is probably why we are such a good team, is we're very different from each other.
Tell me about the collaborations. Tell me about that. So how does that work? Because you alluded to that a bit earlier, that you might be a texture of a cushion or something that inspires you. So tell me about those collaborations. Are they true collaborations in that with the brand or the individual that you're doing it with, where you, Lucinda, are getting involved in designing?
I'm a heavy involver. But,
yeah.
So the first one, which was absolutely our pin-up, which we never, we could have, not socks off. We were so excited.
Which one?
Was the Conran shop. And we went in and we designed a collection with them. And it was very much collaborative. And it took probably about 6 months.
Right.
And it was fabulous. We did rugs and cushions and lighting and, we did placemats and it was absolutely wonderful. When anybody comes to us, John Lewis was another one, where we asked them if they had archives and they were, yes, but, we don't really use them in that way. So we went down there and we spent a day looking through 22,000 archival prints. And it was fantastic. And it was such a lovely story because we used all the archive prints of John Lewis and nobody had done that for them. So I think they were thrilled and we were thrilled. And we worked on them. They were sort of roses. And
I know. I mean, it was
segues.
Absolutely, yes.
So I think, they're all different, but they are all very involved. Sometimes it's with me, sometimes without me, sometimes it's with the team.
Yeah.
There's lots of different ways that we do it.
So you touched on the rose, which is your final charm. So for me, it's very simple. It's exactly a rose, open rose, so not in bud, but actually in flower. Yellow gold stem and leaves that kind of slightly en tremblant, so they move a little bit, and savarite on one leaf, which is lovely green to represent that. And then I've used rubies for the petals, and I kind of, if I can, even this very small scale, but if we can graduate the colour of the rubies, so it's not absolutely, and it's got lots of movement. So rose has obviously been, for you, an important part of your...
Yes. Yes, I think they've followed me or I've followed them throughout. There was a phase where I was shooting and I always had to put a rose in, whether it was roses in their hair, roses that they were dressed up in roses, shredded roses, dead roses, alive roses. I love planting roses, growing them. And...
Is that a childhood thing? Is it?
Well,
where
my
do you
mother
think
did
it
have a
comes
rose
from?
garden, actually. When we were in the country for a short period, she had a beautiful rose garden. She planted a lot of them. I think it's more that there's such variety in them. You get blousy ones. There's so much you can do with them. You get rambling ones. You get tiny dog rose ones.
Yeah.
You get blousy,
Yeah.
you know, crazy ones, drunken roses. You know, you get primroses. You know, you get. There's just so. They come in so many different guises and colours.
And it's the visual, not the smell.
Yes, I don't have actually a very good sense of smell.
That's interesting because that,
Yeah, so it's the visual. Yeah,
that's.
And I was always, you know, threading a rose through something, and I used a lot of roses in prints whenever I was doing prints for, you know, companies. I mean, actually, what's interesting is there's a wonderful eiderdown that we did for John Lewis, which isn't a rose, but it's foliage, and it has all the rose trellis. But we did take out quite a few of the thorns and it was just a lovely, you know,
old-fashioned eiderdown kind of thing.
Yes,
I haven't
it's really
seen
beautiful.
that.
It's green and on linen. It's fabulous. But again, I thought, oh, it's come back again. I'm picking out thorns and working with rose bushes again.
That's so interesting that it kind of, you know, it follows you. It follows
you know,
you. Yeah.
Not all the time, always, but there is a rose thread, definitely.
Now, as a thank you for coming to chat to me, I'd like to make you one of these charms.
Amazing.
And I think,
What do you think?
well, no, because
What do you want to make? What?
I know I don't want to make what I want to make. I want to make what will
I'm
be
torn.
meaningful for you.
Well, I'm torn between the penguin, the star, and the T. I've got to decide now, haven't I?
Yes, you've got to decide now.
Do you know I'm going to go for the penguin?
Are you?
Yeah, because the children all remember her, and I never want her to die.
Oh, that's what it
I
should
never
be all
want
about.
And she was called Minky. You know, we called her Minky, and
That's a nice name for it.
they all adored her because nothing shocked her. Nothing. You could tell her that you had just taken the most terrible quantity of drugs. You could tell her that you had slept with 10 men in a week. You could tell her anything, and nothing shocked her. She'd go, darling, really? Nothing shocked her.
Absolutely.
She was absolutely incredible in that way. Well, I always want them to carry a bit of her, and then to explain to their children what she meant. So that will be incredible.
Lucinda, thank you so much. It's been absolutely lovely to chat to you and learn all about your amazing career.
Well, you've made me think of... Sorry, I'm interrupting you. You know, what I love about how you've designed everything is that they all move. And I think that's about life. It's about keeping on the move and not staying still. I mean, what's beautiful about the charms is you stay still to appreciate them and to look back and look forward and think what they have meant to you. But they all move, and that's about life, isn't it?
I guess that is about life and about that kind of remaining. For me, jewelry's got to be playful, not playful, ha, but playful, and that's my kind of attitude to life too. Because actually, we don't know when it's gonna, you know, end.
Annoushka, lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too. Really lovely to see you.
This is I'm so excited.
And I thought,
Of course. Oh my
what
gosh.
you could have had.
Wow.
And,
That's so beautiful. But that's a lovely thing to have
when you're going to have it.
as an aide de memoire of your life.
Yeah, exactly.
No, incredible.
And here we are.
Oh my God. I'm nervous. Because I know it's a labour of love.
No, well, I
Made
so
with love.
love doing it. I really, really love doing it.
Oh my God. He's darling.
So he's black diamonds.
Yes. Oh my
He's
God.
black diamonds set in yellow gold, mother of pearl tummy,
How clever.
and then on his feet, which look,
Yes.
it says mummy.
No.
Yeah, it does. Very tiny, but it says mummy.
It's just the most beautiful thing. Gosh, the detail is extraordinary. But what's so wonderful is she would have absolutely, just thought this was incredible.
Oh, good. Well, I'm so pleased. I so enjoyed talking to you about your life.
Well, it was lovely. I love talking to you, but this is the most touching, beautiful thing.
Good.
Well, what was incredible about being with Annoushka is that she made me think about things and my life differently, because it was very, it was beautifully tailored about your life in 7 charms. So to sort of distill your life into little physical, beautiful objects to wear was such a kind of interesting and very sentimental, but also it was a journey that actually really made you think about what your life and what it represents and what it represented in charms. So it was beautiful. It was like a beautiful journey to go on. And then we ended up deciding on the penguin, which actually I'm just so thrilled I did, because it's a constant reminder of my mother, but in a physical, beautiful charm.
Thank you for joining us on My Life in Charms. If today's conversation has inspired you to reflect on your own story, begin your Life in Charms journey at anoushka.com or email bespoke@anoushka.com. And don't forget to follow or subscribe to hear more extraordinary stories told in jewels.